obviously, we did an in-depth review of tests 1 to 3. Test 4 at Old Trafford will forever be remembered, I think, as the rainy test, if you like, the one that could have been and maybe wouldn't have been, where that Australia could have still won that test match, however unlikely that might have been, or it could have been a draw. It has to be said, and I think it opened up a discussion around about that test, about how cricket is kind of behind the times of all other sports in terms of, if there's a bit of rain, it can bring about no result. I think for the World Test Championship, they did have a reserve day. They had a day 6 planned in case there was any rain delays, and lo and behold, on the Monday morning, it was bright sunshine, and you would have had a full day's play on a day 6, and it opened up that discussion. I've not seen a lot come of that. I would like to see more come of it. Obviously, it's a different sport, but tennis has in most of their big tournaments now got a roof on the main courts. I'm not suggesting that is a possibility for cricket, mainly because the stadiums for cricket are very strange, really, compared to most sports. So I don't think a roof is the answer. But there has to be something done, I think. Cricket is absolutely fine to have draws. I think that's fine. Where I think it's not fine is when we can have no result to a test match. Obviously, it was a draw in this scenario, but in ODIs, T20s, it would just be a washout, match abandoned, and it doesn't get replayed. And, quite a few times I've actually had tickets for cricket matches. It's been completely washed out, and that's that. You don't get another chance to go and watch that. And that would not happen with any other sport. Football, if a match is abandoned or cancelled or whatever, it gets rescheduled. It gets postponed, is what we say, for waterlogged pitches, frozen pitches. So there is that sort of backstop, if you like. I don't know what your thoughts are on this, Toby, but I was calling out for a Duckworth-Lewis type method, actually. I think, obviously, we've got that in the one-day and T20 game. If rain affects an already started match, they'll rely on the Duckworth-Lewis method and be able to determine what the result would have been. And I think that could be something they use in Test cricket, and it may well be that they come up with, well, this match would have been a draw, and that's fine. But yeah, what are your thoughts on this?
I think the clear reserve day is an obvious idea. I don't see any issues with that. Maybe some logistical issues, but not really, not enough to provide any excuse for not having one, especially when there is a risk of rain. I know they're not always right, but there are such things as weather forecasts. So
yeah.
If
we knew
the
that
5
was going to be
days
an
shows
issue, didn't we?
Yeah. If the 5 days show us completely dry, then it's almost disaster planning to put a day 6 in. But for most English tests, whether it's January, August, or December, there's always some chance of rain, usually, whatever time of the year it is. So a reserve day makes complete sense. My biggest frustration, and seems to be the frustration of a lot of people, is you would get an hour to play. So you would have rain up to midday, and then it would start raining again at 1 o'clock. Rather than going out at midday to play, or maybe 12:15 once the pitch has dried a little bit, all the rest of it. They make this decision, and this was done on a couple of occasions, not just lunch, but general delays with... At 12 o'clock, it stopped raining. Right, what we'll do, now it's stopped raining, we'll take an early lunch and then go back out again at 10 to 1. Everybody else knows that by 10 to 1, it'll probably be raining again.
Yeah.
Sure enough, 5 minutes before the start of the session, it's the heavens open. And it's like, well, you've just missed an opportunity there. And it's not that precious that, oh, well, we've got to have lunch at 12:15. The players have been sat inside for the last hour, so there's none of that excuse. I think that's the biggest frustration that we have. I think I don't know if it's a rule or if it isn't, but once they kind of say, right, we're going to start playing, I don't know if it's for 30 minutes before they actually go out, but I don't see there anything stopping that. I mean, maybe 10 minutes, like they would with a Grand Prix or something like that. It's going to be a 10-minute delay, but having a minimum 30 minutes just to get booted up, I don't understand that. And I think that was something that could have potentially led to having, I don't know, 3 or 4 half an hour, 40-minute sequences, which would have won back 2 or 3 hours and possibly might have forced a result. Yeah. So absolutely. That's the biggest frustration. I think that a day 6 is an obvious one, like we've said. Your Duckworth-Lewis method's interesting, but I think the key thing is whether they are trying or not to make Test cricket bigger, to have a 5-day sport that can still, obviously it can end in a draw if it's controlled like that, but to have a 5-day sport that can end in a draw is ridiculous. Yeah, just think about it. I mean, 90 minutes watching a football match at 0-0's enough. Never mind 5 days of watching cricket. Now, by about the 4th day, this is petering out into a very dull draw. But you can kind of accept that, but the weather aspect of that, you can't accept it. Whether it's England or whoever it is, it just takes away the value altogether. And for such a big series like the Ashes, I think when it's kind of a standalone one-dayer or something like that, something that's not part of a championship, a friendly game or whatever it is, it doesn't matter particularly because it's got no value. But to effectively decide an Ashes series, it's frustrating at best, isn't it? Really.
Yes, I mean, as you were talking there, I've never really had a problem with the concept of a draw in cricket. However, I mean, a little idea that came to my head there would be perhaps a test match could become a bit of a point scoring exercise in that. Say for every 100 runs you score, it's a point. And for every 3 wickets you take, it's a point. And then whoever has the most points at the end of those 5 days gets the victory. And you could still have a tie in that case. And that would sort of help out those situations where you've got a team that are just batting out a draw. I'm talking about Anderson and Panesar 2009. England had no right of getting a result out of that match. Australia were the better team and probably deserved the win, if you like. And under a points-based system, maybe they would win. Do we need draws in cricket? Because it brings about the confusion of a 5-match series being tied 2-2. That's confusing. Yeah, and I think if cricket wants to appeal to everybody, then perhaps it needs to have a bit more black and white about it. Okay, England won the series 3-2 on countback or something like that. I mean, I think maybe you could bring those points-based scenarios in if the match is weather affected. Whereas if it plays out the full 5 days and it's still even, then you call a draw there. I don't know. I think something has to be done. I think the other talking point is the over rates. They're meant to bowl 90 overs a day. That's what's meant to happen. It's what always used to happen. It seems since the introduction of DRS and the concussion things for the batsmen, drinks breaks, lots of drinks breaks and slow drinks breaks. They're only really playing 75, 80 overs a day now, which if you tot that up over a series, it's almost 2 innings probably that we're losing over the course of a series because of slow play. I think one solution for beating the weather, if you like, would be actually bowling the 90 overs, because so many test matches do not last 5 days now. So if you're bowling the right amount of overs, then you'll probably get the matches in, rain or no rain. So I think that's another thing to think about. I don't know how you get around it, other than if you're 15 overs short on one day, you add them onto the next day, or you take time off, or they start earlier, finish later. I think that cricket is very rigid, and it's a bit ridiculous that they start play at 11 o'clock in this day and age. Why is it 11 o'clock? Why aren't they starting at 10 o'clock and finishing at 7? It's a bit of an odd one for me.
It's tricky, isn't it? Because if you made, say, one exception, then England went and won the Test match. It'd be, well, they've just altered the rules to suit England. But and on that occasion and throughout the summer, there's no reason why you can't go on till 8:30, 9 o'clock.
Yeah. And I think it's not about that series. That series is done now. A bit like Abu Dhabi 21. People still hark on about that, but ultimately you've got to learn from what was, I think, a mistake and made cricket look bad and made a lot of people confused in a summer that I think attracted a lot of interest in cricket and could have really built on that momentum and maybe brought about a new generation of cricket fans. It sort of petered out because of some silly rules that cricket have. And I think something needs to be done so that in 4 years' time we're not having the same conversation, realistically. But whether it will or not, I don't know.
Unfortunately, I don't think anything will change. But because that's the way it's been and that's the way it'll carry on. I don't see cricket as a very vibrant's not the word, but particularly Test cricket.
Progressive,
it's very, as you say, rigid.
It's not progressive.
Very rigid.
No,
I agree with that. But you know what? It was, apart from that, it was a great series. I think in the end, I think 2-2 was a fair result.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of people say, and I think you'll agree with me on this, that a lot of people have said that, well, Ben Stokes shouldn't have declared in that first test. That's what lost them the Ashes.
No.
And people keep forgetting that they were 7 down at this time. They probably would have got 50 more runs maximum. And on the last day, Lyon and Cummins would have probably still got them. So it's not an such obvious thing that people say, well, England threw it away. I don't accept that. But I think the way it ended 2 each, obviously Australia retained it because they won the last one, but from where England have been the last couple of years to where they are now is tremendous progress, I think. And I came into the series my usual pessimistic self, saying that they'd be found out by Australia, and I think actually the opposite happened. Australia weren't found out as such, but they were very sort of nonchalant about Bazball. That didn't really think it would make a difference. Well, from the first day it made a difference because Australia's field settings, all of it was reactive to the Bazball. There's no question about that. And it made the series more exciting as a whole. Whether it did lose England a test match at one point, maybe it might have done with some of the aggressive play, but I think, as you've quite rightly pointed out, if you play tippy-tappy cricket, we haven't got the quality of cricketers, not the quality in terms of their talent, but the defensive qualities to put up with that either. So ultimately, it wasn't Bazball that lost it. I think Australia were probably just the better team overall. But as I say, I think 2-2, probably a fair result. It's just a shame. We've got to wait 2.5 years now till the next one, isn't it?
I think it'll be a very different 25. England side as well that go down there. I think, as you say, 2-2 is a fair result. I think England could have won it 5-0, to be fair. I think England had maybe the first 2 matches in their hands, if you like. Obviously,
it could have gone 5-0 either way, which is quite ironic.
Yeah. The third match at Headingley, Australia could have easily won. I mean, we won by 3 wickets, I think it was, in the end. It looked like it was going to go the other way. So I think on balance 2-2 is right. And hopefully we can go to Australia. I think actually Australian pitches will suit Bazball quite well. The aggressive style of play. I think where England, need to massively improve, and I think they were found out a little bit this series is with the ball, and I think this series in particular showed how reliant they have been on the brilliance of Jimmy Anderson over the years, and with Jimmy Anderson not being at his best, anywhere near it, I think we were found wanting a little bit with the ball and not being able to get those key wickets. And Chris Woakes played out of his skin, but he's not going to be able to do that in Australia, in my opinion. Stuart Broad obviously gone, and where is that new talent with the ball? Josh Tongue is there, Matty Potts of course, but that's the one area I really worry for England. I think we've got a pretty solid batting lineup for the next 5-6 years. I don't see that changing very much now, other than perhaps Bairstow. I don't think he'll get unlimited time in that position. But other than that, I think I think most of those will be around come the next Ashes. Don't think Jimmy Anderson will be.
No, you're absolutely right. But I think this is the same problem England had at the other end of the order when Strauss and Cookie went. Obviously, Strauss long time before Cookie went, but it's took them 5, 6, 7, even longer to replace those two. So it might just be a thing that we have to wait for the talent to come through from a bowling perspective, and hope that where the bowling has carried us previously, the batting can start to carry us in the future. Ultimately, you just have to be amazed at the quality of Australia, thinking about their bowling lineup and their batting lineup as well. They've got two of the three best batsmen in the world. They've got the best fast bowling attack in the world. So whether England can match that when they go down under, it remains to be seen. But it's a long way off yet. And that's it for the Test action, isn't it? This year we've got no more tests until early next year now. So
and realistically, that's the last accessible cricket that people will have for quite a long time. I believe BT have still got the right, or TNT it is now, for the away test matches. So unless Channel 4 do a thing where, last time Channel 4 I think got the rights to the away series in India, so maybe they'll be able to do that again. But it's Sky Sports is expensive, but I think a lot more people have Sky Sports than have BT, and I think having visibility of cricket is going to be important over the next 12 months. But one thing that is happening, obviously, the Cricket World Cup, the defence for England starting up. It's an interesting one. I think that you look at the squad and it's not too dissimilar to the one that won it 4 years ago. Obviously, notable omission is Owen Morgan, who of course was the captain, but Ben Stokes seems to be a bit of a yo-yo, or doing a bit of a hokey-cokey, I think, when it comes to international retirement for one-day internationals, and he's, for me, disappointingly announced that he's going to be playing in the World Cup today. And for me, I'd rather he went away and sorted himself out a little bit. There's a big gap until the India Test series, and I think if he managed to get his knee sorted, even if he missed the Indian Test series and he was back next summer, for instance, I think it's better for England that you've got a fit Ben Stokes than Ben Stokes, who might or might not help us win a World Cup. But long term, for me, I don't know if that's the right decision. But of course, it's up to him. I don't know what if you've got any thoughts on that, Toby.
Not particularly. I think that I think he's looked at it probably that it'll be his last World Cup, because I can't see him playing in one days in 4 years' time.
Yeah.
So that there is that element to it, wanting to retain that. So I understand that to a degree, and I think that if you look in terms of priorities, the top Test series is the Ashes, and you've got the Cricket World Cup, which is kind of the next discipline. So for him to miss out on potentially India next year as a result of going to the Cricket World Cup, I don't think that's going to bother him massively. Yes, he's the England captain, but apart from the World Test Championship, which still isn't something with a massive prestige, I don't think. It makes things interesting, but I think my point is that he's going to be allured to a Cricket World Cup rather than just not a meaningless, but a Test series that has a lot less meaning or prestige to it than a Cricket World Cup. So I understand that.
I have to disagree with you there. I think an away series in India is actually one of the big events for England cricket, and I don't think he's going to have that time away now. I think this was the opportunity for him to have surgery or whatever it was. I fully expect that he will be there after Christmas in India. Hopefully he plays well at the World Cup. It would be a bit embarrassing if he doesn't. He won't bowl, which, you know, I mean, you've got to look at his quality as a batsman, and I guess he's going to go straight into that England team. You'd be a bit miffed if you were in that England setup and he gets your place, because he's been retired from one days on and off over the last few years. He reiterated as recent as 2 weeks ago that he wasn't going to come out of retirement. So it is what it is. I mean, do you think England have got a good chance at winning the World Cup again?
To be completely honest, I don't know how. Don't follow the one-day international cricket that much. But apart from, I love the World Cup, particularly the last one in England. But mostly after that, I don't follow one-days that much. But if the squad's not changed that much, we're very strong, albeit on home soil. With it being in India, you know, one of the strongest teams, obviously, that'll make it interesting. But to be honest, if my spot was took by Ben Stokes, I don't think I could argue. I understand that he's been retired and he's walked back in, but if you just think of some of his performances in that magical summer of 2019, I said I hadn't got a prop, but we'll bring it back for the second time.
Oh, here
That's
we go.
summer to remember. That's summer to remember. Ultimately, he's got to be back in. So, yeah, I agree with some of the sentiments of what you're saying, but I think surely if he gets to the end of his career, is he going to look back on a second World Cup win potentially, or a win at an away Indian series? I know personally which one I'd pick.
Yeah. No, I completely understand, and well, fingers crossed we can do well in the Cricket World Cup, and hopefully we'll get good visibility of that on the TV as well, and really get behind England, and also, you know, watch some of the other nations, some of the smaller nations that don't necessarily play Test cricket, like the Netherlands. I know Ireland do play Test cricket now, but I think Ireland have qualified. I might be wrong. Scotland, of course, traditionally World Cup teams, so I'm intrigued to see all that happen, and Cricket World Cup's always a good time. But any final things to say about the cricket before we move on?
Well, we're not a cricket podcast anymore. After this minute, cricket's gone. We're not a cricket podcast anymore. Well, maybe apart from a bit about the World Cup, but we're going to go back to the other sport.